Hey gang, talked to Doug at the machine shop the other day and I brought him the second exterior block that he's gonna bore and hone and deck and clean up and shot peen and all that nice stuff for us. And when I mentioned I wanted to shot peen it, he said, oh, well, you're gonna have to remove these little plugs in the block. And I'm like, what plugs? I've never seen any more plugs. I mean, the freeze plugs, but he's like, no, there's oil galley plugs. And he showed me one in the front. And I was like, what the heck is that thing? Because I'd never seen one before. Turns out there's three of them. One actually is a plug that blocks off the backside oil galley from an opening that's to the oil pump in the front. And then there are two, one on the front, one on the back, that enclose the center oil channel. And I'm going to show you on one of these blocks that I cut in half where this oil channel is. And then I'll explain to you the madness that it has taken to remove these. And I'll show you how to do it. I've been practicing on the extra blocks that I have. So you've seen these before. These are the blocks that I cut in half while we were investigating all the, cutting out the center cooling channel. And so what you're going to see here is right here, there's half of a plug still in there. Right there. It's been cut in half and the other piece of it came out of there. That's the plug. So once they're removed, they look like this. It's a 10mm plug and it goes in here and sits flush like this. That blocks off this whole cooling channel here. I mean, oil channel. It looks a little funky towards the back because the cut in the block didn't actually get centered. Obviously, since half of that plug is still there. And this is a little more indicative of what the whole channel looks like. But anyway, that sources oil to the mains. So if you can see the oil, that's how the actual main bearings get oil. Oil is actually in the oil pan, obviously, and it picks up in the oil pump, and it goes into this center channel, and these vertical lines are what feed the crank main journals, which is where your main bearings ride. So anyway, this whole center channel is for the oil. So these plugs are in here, and Doug said the trick is when you shot peen these, you're gonna get shot peen media in this channel, and then you're gonna need to make sure you get it out. Well, the odd thing is when we shot peened the first block, we didn't know that. So I went through this whole charade to figure out how to remove these plugs. In theory, you probably didn't need to go to all this effort because the machine shop can do this. I just didn't want to pay for it. So I figured I'd rather invest that money in the tools. And good thing I had extra blocks because I had trouble. I needed the practice. I'll be able to explain to you what I did, and you probably won't need the practice, but you're going to need good drill bits, and you're going to need a slide hammer like you would use for removing dents if you're doing body work. This is the slide hammer. I bought it at O'Reilly's. This is a self-tapping screw, which I'll show you. I got a variety of things to try, and ironically, finally figured out what worked. This particular self-tapping screw seemed to have the most aggressive thread pattern to grab on to the inside of these plugs once it's been drilled out in order to allow the slide hammer to work. See how they go into this spot in here, okay? So what you do is you got to drill a hole in that, and then you have to somehow attach this slide hammer to the hole you drilled. Sounds like an easy thing to do, but it really took several iterations for me to get this correct. So I'll put it in the notes below the video too, what part number this is at O'Reilly's. O'Reilly's does a couple of things really well. They have access to an awful lot of things that are not in their store. So whenever I look, especially tools. So for example, AutoZone typically does not have great tools. So I don't do tools at AutoZone. O'Reilly's doesn't have great rental tools because it seems like everything that they have is pretty much the same thing AutoZone has, but they're always such a general purpose application for tools, they don't work with anything. But what they do have is, if you look up any of the common tools like a giant valve spring compressor or whatever it is, they source L-I-S-L-E, Liesel or Leslie or Lisley or Lissel or whatever you want to call them. Those tools are generally working every time I buy one. I just had a hog ring pliers that worked beautifully. The Harbor Freight ones would not work. So, and you guys know how annoyed I get from all this Chinese made crap. Works one time or doesn't work at all. And so I've been relatively consistent with tools from O'Reilly's. I ordered two. There was a smaller one. It was only a 15-ounce hammer. Relating the actual weight of this thing. This is a 3-pound hammer. And what's nice about this one is the way that the tip is set up. You can set it up for a couple of different purposes. The reason this is really nice is this, obviously this machine screw is sitting in here. Well, look what I did to it. I shaved off the collar or the washer that's normally around this, right? The reason I did that is inside here, you can kind of see that there is a 5/16 internal hex fit. So when you put the bolt in here, that sucker sits snug right inside that little spot. And that way, the bolt is locked to the base, and then I can screw this in. So once the tip goes on here, okay, once that tip goes on there, this bolt is now basically secured to this shaft. So you have like a giant threaded screwdriver, and then there's a big nut back here that you can use with your 3/4 inch wrench. And when you get this in here like that, you can basically just twist and turn this sucker all the way in to get really good torque using that bolt and your wrench. The reason that's important is these plugs are really well secured in there. So you have to have some serious grip, otherwise you'll just tear the screw right out of the hole that you've drilled. So drilling the hole size correctly is important. Getting the right size screw in there is important. Having the right tool is important. So I put all this together. So with the size of the screw, where to get it, I'll put all this in the notes below so you don't have to mess around with this crap and hopefully not waste 3 days like I did. Anyway, I have just practiced on several, well, halves of these motors. And now I'm going to get the block we're actually going to work on. I did this at Doug's because I took it up to him to have him do it when I got frustrated after I drilled the holes, but I broke 6 drill bits in the process today trying to get it working correctly. I literally went out to Home Depot today and I bought new drill bits. Normally, the drill bits you're going to get at Home Depot are crap. I shouldn't say that. Everything that you might need for quality machine tools, aka drill bits, punches, easy outs, that kind of stuff, you are not going to find at Home Depot. I managed to find this brand, Cle-Line, derivative of the Cleveland brand, which is ironically made in the USA. I looked at all kinds of reviews online, specifically around drill bits. You know, the treatments people are using, black oxide and titanium coatings and all this crap. But the number one thing that seemed to come down to is made in America. If you buy Milwaukee or you buy Ryobi or you buy any of this stuff, look on the label. This is the only made in America drill bit in the entire store at Home Depot. I was happy to find this brand, and I'm happy to say I've already drilled, and it was, compared to the other drill bits I had from Harbor Freight, which were probably 20 years old, that I broke 6 of today, and a couple of other drill bits I broke. Actually, I probably broke like 8. There's pieces everywhere around here. I had some extra ones laying around that I got from some auction tools or whatever. This is going to probably be a requirement to have good drill bits. I did break off a couple of those cheap self-tapping sheet metal screws. I broke one of these off in a hole, and fortunately drilling that out was not terrible with another bit. So this one is actually stainless steel. I bought it at Ace. It was way more money than these cheap ones. So you're going to need stainless steel. I'll give you all this information in the notes, but I broke a couple of these off in the hole. Those are more difficult to get out. I don't have anything that will drill this out. Those bits are really expensive. I fortunately broke it up with just enough sticking out that I got a pair of vice grips on and I got it to twist out, so we got lucky. I was relatively happy with these drill bits. They will work. Something weird, they're calling them black and gold. They don't even go as far as telling you what that means. Is the black oxide? What's the gold? Is the gold titanium? They only say contains a higher percentage of critical elements, which are molybdenum and vanadium, making the drill bit harder and stronger. Black and gold finish adds lubricity, allowing the drill to run cooler and last longer. So the reason all that's important is the research that I did. Everybody's buying titanium drill bits. Well, the problem with titanium coated drill bits, if they were really titanium, you wouldn't be able to buy them, certainly not at Home Depot. It's just a surface treatment that they give them, and it looks a lot like these. I couldn't tell you for sure if this is actually titanium or not, but it's the same color. But the problem is that the titanium wears off rather quickly on the tips, which is where your whole cutting area is to get started. So if you don't have that, you don't have a drill bit, which is why I keep breaking them, because they're thin and they're narrow, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on them. So this drill bit was acceptable. Ironically, the case is made in China, but the drill bit is not. They have a factory in South Carolina. So this worked. I used a 3/32 for a pilot hole. I used a 5/32 to drill the actual hole. And 5/32 worked perfect for my, I believe this is a number, yeah, I think it might be a number 10. I'll put it in the notes. We got the job done. The other cool thing is that I can pull freeze plugs with this too. I'll actually do it. I'll actually show it so you can see me actually do it on the next block that we take freeze plugs out of. But for now, I'm going to concentrate on showing you how to get these oil galley plugs out. So let's do it. All right, so look how pretty that is. I want to show you visually the difference between these. This is the cheap machine screw. This is the stainless steel. It's really difficult to tell. All right, so we're going to load our screw into our tip. Make sure it's in there. Okay. Screw the tip on. Okay. So there's our assembled tool. Now we're just going to screw it into here and grab our wrench so we can tighten her in. Let's see if we can yank it out. Okay. Now it's really going to be interesting to see if there's actually anything in there. If there's any shot peen material from our shot peen job. That was what this whole effort was to do, to protect. The concept was that there might be shot peen media left in there because we didn't remove these before we did this process. So let's yank the back one out, push some air through it and see what we get. Let's also see if there's any damage to the screw. Wow, no, this is great. What a great tool we've been able to build here. I'm really impressed. Okay. So the second one is the back side of that front one. The third one is over here. This is what I was telling you about earlier. The opposite side of that is actually just an open hole that feeds in from the oil pump. Very curious. Okay, let's do it. All right, we've got our tool installed. You don't want to balance this. New screws are way stronger, but I broke one doing this, just kind of letting the weight of this thing, this is a 3-pound weight. So it actually was enough to fracture. I was actually sliding this, hitting back here on this spot, and just that momentum is what's yanking the plug right out of the front. So see how that's coming out? Nope. The bolt came right out, which means we got to go to our backup screw plan that I got. This is the problem you have if your hole is too big. I got these other backup screws, which may not be as aggressive as I thought either. Let's see if this works. It's just a regular sort of cone head Phillips screw, and I'm gonna see if maybe I can get that to work. It's the right size fitting into the tip of this, but it's still gotta be enough to grab in this hole. Let's use that. Just a cone head screw. The way it fits in this tip here is it's not going to be secured in there like that 5/16 head is. It just slips right in there, and then there's just enough here sticking out to go in that hole. But we do need a Phillips head screwdriver. Okay. So we just got to screw that tip in as far as we can get it in there until it tightens up. I don't want to break it. It is stainless also, so hopefully it's strong enough to withhold this. Let's see if we get lucky. It doesn't have to be like super tight. You just need to have enough threads that it's not going to slip. So let's see what happens. Darn it. Okay, plan C. Here it is. Just happens to be a little fatter. Yep, that'll work. A little more aggressive thread. Not taking a lot of tension. This is probably just going to strip out too. And then otherwise, we got to go to plan D, which is probably tapping that sucker. Yeah, I think we might. Yay! Look at that! All right, so we didn't have to go to plan D, but I'm going to show you what it is in case you run into this problem. And it's also a feature of this particular slide hammer. So what you can do is actually use this sheen screw, and I think it's a 1/4 by 20. Okay, so it's an Allen. So what we're left with is this machine screw screwed in there, and it's threaded. It's actually threaded into the tip here. So that's one solid piece. Now, this obviously can still attach to the slide hammer, and if we had to, we could drill and tap these threads into our plug and then yank it out. That would have been the last scenario. And that's actually probably what I could have done real quick. Since that other hole was so big around, I could have just grabbed the tap, the right tap, and pushed it through and done that. So that's pretty simple. But as many of you know, it takes a few extra minutes, but I'm like that guy. What's that movie? Tin Cup. Did you ever see that movie? That's the same problem I have, is I always have to go for it. What I really wanted to do was learn how to do this. I could have paid Doug 30 bucks, not spent 4 hours on the road chasing down parts, but I wanted to know how to do this. I wanted to be able to do this with, you know, a simple drill bit, and a slide hammer. So, you know what? On this channel, we go for it. We officially have all 3 of those plugs out. I'll show you the new ones too, and give you a part number in case you're actually doing this on a VG33E engine. These are actually the new ones, 11024-K0100. So these are the holes in the main surface. These feed the main bearings, and that, as we were seeing earlier on the block that's cut in half, which now should go all the way through. Oh yes, there's just enough light at the back, you can see that. So let's blow some air through there and see if there's anything that comes out of there. All right, so we didn't find any shot peen media. Feel better knowing that we did it, but the fear and the risk that we were taking of something being in there turned out to be unwarranted. So our first shot peening experience, or at least my washing experience of it afterwards, did get everything out of there. So I'm gonna actually wash it tomorrow again with, put soap and water through there instead of just air, because that'll carry a little more out if there is anything in there. We definitely don't want to have even in any of the little metal shavings from drilling the holes in those plugs. So we'll get it all cleaned up, and then we'll press the new plugs in and get this one underway. Well, here's the boneyard of all the broken drill bits today. Broken screws, broken bits, even these big ones. Here's a little piece that actually stuck in the plug. Thank goodness that I was able to get the vice grips on and get it out. I think drilling through that would have been tough with any of the drill bits that I have. So the head breaking off, I mean, there was a lot.